What's up, profitable stylists? We are flying solo today. Bernard's on a business trip last week. We skipped last week. Bernard's also on a business trip this week. Didn't want to skip this week. So I have control of everything. I'm going to be doing a highlighting review and a color review in general. Bernard teaches hair replacement, amazing hair replacement courses. He also teaches a lot of hair extension courses, the keratin bonded, the flat beaded stranded, right? And the extended wear toppers. I teach the extensions as well. I also teach the topper class as well. I also additionally teach hair cutting, styling, keratin smoothing treatments, hair loss, hair regrowth, retailing, business classes, and hair color. Hair color is by far the second most profit producing service that we have, right behind hair extensions. We all know this. The crazy thing about hair color though is there's so many different ways, techniques, products, things going on. And there's a lot of variables involved when it comes to hair color. Because there's so many variables, the other thing that gets thrown into hair color a lot is the trends. And nobody can keep up with how many different trends are going on at any given time. The client can barely keep up because they're constantly getting bombarded with social media, with the press, with the news, with Hollywood, all the different things that tell them, this is hot right now. This is hot right now. This is hot right now. As a hairdresser, it was pretty easy to keep up with because it was seasonal. You'd get 2 or 3 trends per season. That's what you had to keep up with. Well, nowadays it's like 2 or 3 trends every week. So it's almost impossible to know what thing is what. I'm going to break it down so that at least this way the language makes a little bit more sense to a little bit of everybody. These are some of the observations that I have made in the classes that I teach, in the technical questions that I get, and the explanations that I have to give when I'm behind the chair at the salon with my own clients. Because even my own clients come in and say, hey, Eddie, what is this means? Or, hey, Eddie, I was reading about this. Can I get this? What do you think, right? And at the end of the day, no matter where somebody sees something, they're always going to rely on us, the hairdresser, to be the ultimate guide to let them know, will this work for them? Because at the end of the day, we are the ones that are custom tailoring all of these techniques for our clients. So this list that I'm going to go through is a pretty loose list that I made. It's not a top 10 list. It's not a from worst to best or best to worst ranking type of thing at all. Again, this is just a bunch of observations that I have made. I wrote down a bunch of notes. These are a lot of the comments, questions, and posts that I see, that I get sent, that I get phone call, text message, emailed. You know, what is this? What is this? What is this? All right, here we go. What is highlighting? You try Google searching what is highlighting. There's not a lot of answers. There's a lot of techniques. There's a lot of trends. There's a lot of people promoting their product. But the actual what is highlighting, you'd be surprised how many people get confused, right? In the most simplest terms, highlighting is removing pigment from the hair to go from dark to light. Why does that matter? Well, nowadays, a lot of people are concerned about ingredients, and there are a lot of concern about processing, about having healthy hair. Once upon a time, nobody cared. They just wanted to bleach their hair, blast it out, get it as light as possible, call it a day. We used to refer to that as double processing. Well, nowadays, with all the different techniques that are available, you don't just have to blast your hair out. And there's so many more options available with the technology. So, highlighting at the end of the day is still removing your natural pigment from your hair to make it lighter, and then afterwards to tone it or to complete the process of highlighting to keep the longevity in place. All right. How does that work? What are different ways of highlighting your hair? Well, at the base level, as far as the products themselves go, techniques is different. The products is different, right? There's a ton of Google searches out there, but there's not a lot of good explanations for this. You've got Bleach, you've got Lightener, and there's this big argument about, is there a difference? Is there not a difference? Why does one work the way it does? Why does one not work the way it does? Thinking back on it, Bernard and I had done a video about this a while ago, about the process of lightening and what it takes to go through the process of lightening. Bleach, you gotta have some kind of activating ingredient, all right? I got a phone call yesterday. Somebody was asking, does your bleach have ammonia in it? Now, once upon a time, yeah, sure. You can have ammonia in bleach. I guess it existed, right? Especially in more of the cream bleaches or the liquid bleaches. Those aren't as common these days anymore, but once upon a time it did exist. In powdered bleaches, in powdered lighteners, they're using, I hope I pronounce this correctly with my accent, persulfate salts. That's what they use in powder, okay? So that's more lightener. When you're using bleaches, that's more ammonia. That's more aggressive. When you're mixing, basically what's happening is when you're mixing it with hydrogen peroxide, when you're mixing it with a developer, you're creating that, you're activating that ingredient, which is creating the lifting process, the lightening process. It's aggressively attacking the pigment in your hair. All right. So when somebody says, oh, I use bleach, or oh, I use lightener, there is a difference in the product. And so many times when I'm in a class, when I'm teaching a class, a lot of stylists say, oh, bleach is bleach. It's all bleach. It's all the same thing. And it's not. And they don't realize half the time that they're actually using a lightener. They're not using a bleach. And then the reverse. I'll have a bunch of stylists say, I never use bleach. But then you go into the dispensary. Yeah, they actually are. So that's the biggest difference. Now, with lighteners and with bleaches, they come in two forms, white and blue. Yes, there are two different products. Do they do the same thing? The idea behind a blue or a violet or some kind of colored pre-pigmented lightener is, the idea behind it, it's trying to eliminate unwanted warmth. Yeah, okay, fine. Will white lightener work? Will white bleach still work? Yes, it will. You're still going through the lightening process. You're still going through the lifting process. You're still removing natural pigment from the hair. You're dissolving melanin. So, will you need to tone as much at the shampoo bowl if you use a blue over a white? Some are going to argue with you, no, it's the same thing. Some are going to argue, oh yeah, no, it's way better. It controls, blue lighteners control warmth way more. From the science, when you break it down, you're still dissolving pigment at the end of the day. So you're still going to have to complete that process at the end of the day. I don't care. If you are more confident with using a blue over a white, and that allows you to do your services the way you need to do your services, I'm all behind you. I'm all for it. Do it. Use it. Go for it. Okay? If you're confident, this is usually what I'll say in a class. If you're the type of the colorist that you want to control and dictate 100% what the finishing toning result is going to become, use the white ones. If you feel like you need something to help you control that lift, if you feel like you want to lift it to a certain level and then be done with it and then just seal the hair off afterwards, then that's fine. Use the blue one, all right? Now they have blue developers. Most cream-based developers for hair color are white or clear. Now they have blue-based developers, and the idea behind that is they've got more pigmentation. They've got more tonal control in there. Okay, fine. Go ahead and use it. It'll help you do what you need to do, and it'll bring you that confidence. So I'm all for it. I'm all behind that as well. Cream lighteners still exist. They're not as popular as they used to be. Cream lighteners, for the most part, were designed to be applied directly to the scalp, especially if you can recall back more in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? Everybody wanted to be a double process blonde. Think back to some of the celebrities. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Who's those, who those girls? The Spice Girls. You know, everybody wanted to look like Beckham. Whichever one she was from the Spice Girls. Somebody help me out with that. So you would put the cream bleach on somebody's head. You'd hand them a coffee stir, or you'd hand them a tail comb, like the plastic tail comb, not the metal tail combs. Or you'd hand them an applicator brush and you'd say, just itch yourself, you know, because it's going to hurt, it's going to burn. And we'd pop some people even under the dryer. We'd let them cook. We'd take them back to the shampoo bowl. We'd rinse their hair with the cold water, as cold as possible. And they'd still tell us to make the water colder because their scalp was on fire, right? And then we'd go and we'd mix a toner, and we'd tone their hair, and they'd be, you know, platinum blonde. You know, that's how we were doing platinum blondes back then. Nowadays, it's platinum card. It's a different way of doing it, which we'll get to in a little bit. But that's what cream lighteners were designed to do. The idea was that you would be doing an all-over application instead of sitting there and foiling all day long and doing a full-headed highlight. Now, because it was so aggressive, because it hurt so much, a lot of people were trying to look for alternatives, and they were trying to get away from doing that full head of application with bleach or with lightener. So they came up with HighLifting blonde hair color. HighLifting blonde hair color was designed to be mixed instead of how most color is mixed equal parts. High lift color is designed to be mixed with double developer. So you put, I don't know, just for all intent and purposes, 30 grams is an ounce for this conversation. I know it's not, but that's just what we're going to go with, okay? So for equal parts, if you put 30 grams of color, you would put 60 grams of developer. Or if you did 1 ounce of color, you would put 2 ounces of developer. And for the most part, most companies say double 30 volume, double 40 volume. They want you to use 30 or 40 volume developer. In my opinion, and in a very common opinion, 40, you know, double 40 volume is the way to go. You're maximizing all the lift that you can get out of it. You're still going to end up brassy in some situations. Why? It's really designed to work on somebody who's naturally a dishwater blonde. Who is a dishwater blonde? Somebody who's naturally a level 7 or level 8 to begin with, okay? Now, the manufacturers will say, oh yeah, from level 6 and 7 and up, you're going to get the best results. Yes, texture, density, and porosity, though, you got to factor that in. If somebody's got thin, fine hair, soft hair, fragile hair, right? If somebody has some decent porosity or even some compromised, a little bit damaged porosity, then you're going to be able to blast through that existing level where they're at and then lighten them up and get them to that magic level 10 that everybody wants to be at, or even lighter if it's possible. How does that work? Well, at the end of the day, you got to remember that even 40 volume gives you up to 4 levels of lift. It's not a guaranteed 4 levels of lift. So you got to break through the level that you're starting at. That's already 1 level of lift, even though you haven't gone up a level. The first level that you go up to is actually your second level of lift, then your third, then your fourth. So that's why they say up to 4 levels. HighLifting Color is a lift and tone in one. It has a little extra punch to it. It's got a little extra ammonia in it, and it's got a built-in toner in it as well too. It's designed to get you up there and then balance everything out all in one go. HighLifting Colors work. It's a thing. Then there is additives. We used to put a lot of additives into our lighteners and into our bleaches and even into our HighLifting Colors as well too. The idea was it's like an extra lightening cream. It's trying to give you an extra punch. You're trying to get an additional half a level to a full level of lift over what's already designed to do. Then you've got things like flashlights, all right? Those are fast-acting processes. So what that means is a standard process can take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes it can take 45 minutes to an hour. Well, flashlight kind of systems and technologies, you can get 7 levels of lift in 15 minutes, or you can get 9 levels of lift in 20, 30 minutes, something like that, right? It's designed to make the processing time more concise. And what that's doing is the technology is basically using the full processing time, but condensing it down. So it's like a drive-through service, right? It's a speed oriented service. And with all of these techniques, when you're highlighting hair, you're either freehanding it, you're either foiling it, you're somehow separating that hair with something. Some people use saran wrap, some people use cotton, some people use paddles. You know, there isn't a right or wrong way to do it. There isn't a best way or worst way to do it. You just need to figure out what is the style, what is the end result, the effect that you're trying to go for. So because of a lot of the freehanding techniques, which we'll talk about, which we're getting to now as well, a lot of people came up with clay-based lighteners instead of powdered or cream or liquid-based lighteners. A lot of people came up with clay-based lighteners. And clay-based lighteners are designed to be a little bit thicker. The idea is when you mix a bleach or when you mix a lightener, as it starts to oxidize, as it starts to develop, it will start to expand. It will start to blow up. All right. If you're freehanding that into the hair, then if you put a little bit here, it's going to spread into all the hair next to it and above and below it as well. And now you're going to end up with a big blotch. So a clay-based lightener is designed to be harder, to dry from the outside in. It's designed to give you more control for your placement. It all comes down to mixing ratios. If you are just eyeballing when you mix something, then it doesn't matter what I just said. Nothing is going to work. It's all just going to do whatever it's going to do. It's inconsistent. Why do people eyeball and not weigh out their mixing ratios? Everybody likes their own consistency. Plain and simple, that's what it comes down to. I'm guilty of that myself, okay? Some days I'm just not in the mood, and I just end up eyeballing it. And I can tell when I did, because I'm spending a lot more time on the back end trying to balance it out with a toner. When you mix a lightener or a bleach, I don't care which one you're using, when you weigh it out, you're always going to get way more consistent results. And the reason why that matters is because if you track that on your formula card, I can say, okay, listen, I mixed 30 grams of lightener, I put 60 grams of developer, and I lifted this much. Next time I need to lift more. So then I need to maybe lower my mixing ratio or increase my mixing ratio a little bit, right? I can adjust it because I have measurable results to work off of. That's the reason why measuring your lightener or your bleach is so important. The other reason why it's so important is because if you mix it too thin, it's going to blow up. It's going to ooze more. And that's going to give you a chance for it. If you've wrapped it up in foils, for example, it's going to ooze out of the foils. It's going to bleed all over the place. If you're freehanding it, it's going to start dripping all over the place. Or if you did it too little, if you didn't do equal parts, if you did less than equal parts, now you've got a thicker consistency, right? It dries out quicker. Lightener and bleaches work with moisture. The longer it stays, the longer it retains its moisture, the longer it's going to process, which is going to equal more lift, more lightness. That's why you'll see sometimes somebody will come back in halfway through their processing time and they'll re-wet the foil or they'll reapply some of the lightener in the foil so they can reactivate that lifting action. All right. So that goes to the mixing ratios and why that's so important. And it doesn't, I don't care what you're using. Oh, there's a newer now type of lighteners and bleaches that are out that are charcoal based. That's trending right now. Okay, fine. And that's okay. It's, but listen, it's trending right now. And I'm not saying anything against it. The reason why it's trending is because it has always existed. All right. And a charcoal-based lightener or a charcoal-based bleach is designed to remove the impurities that exist on the hair, any kind of pre-existing buildup or heavy oils, you know, if somebody's hair is very oily or very greasy, right? And then it's designed to give you a more consistent level of lift or lightness. There's this big argument on applying lightener to dry hair or to wet hair. Well, you can pre-clarify somebody. Now, the people that are against doing that is because they feel that by pre-cleansing the hair, you're removing the natural oils and the natural buildup that exist. And you need that to protect against your bleach or your lightener because it's very aggressive during the lightening process. You're drying out the hair. You're drying out the hair even more. Those natural oils and buildups will help protect against some of that aggressive action, of a bleach or a lightener. Some other people have the mindset of, look, if I'm trying to highlight your hair, I'm trying to get through all that pigment that's in your hair. I need to get everything else off of there so my lightener is not losing some of its strength, breaking through that barrier, through that layer, and then it's just losing some of its potential lifting action by the time it actually gets to your hair. Those are the two mindsets. Which way is right? Which way is wrong? That's the beautiful thing about hair color, is that it's so variable. There's a different mindset in everything, okay? It also depends on the consultation. Every week, I'm always droning on about consultation, and I'm always droning about the governing factors of the hair: texture, density, and porosity. What does the person have? What do they want? And what technique are you using to get them there? Okay, so I'm not here to say which way is right and which way is wrong. It doesn't matter. Personally, I'll even inject my own opinion into the argument. I'm on both sides. I do both. Sometimes I don't wash the hair. I don't clarify the hair. And I highlight right over their dry hair that they just came in with. I brush their hair out and I just start applying. Sometimes I do clarify first and then apply on towel dried, damp hair, not dripping wet hair. All right. On that one, I will say there is a difference. How do you know if the hair is towel dried? Everybody says 80% towel dried or 80%, right? What is 80%? Look, run your hand through somebody's hair. If you're drawing so much moisture away that you have to wipe your hand off, that's not towel dried. If you run your hand through somebody's hair and you can feel that it's damp, but there's not excess moisture that you need to wipe your hand off, that's towel dried. That's 80%. Easiest way I'm going to say it like that. All right. Now, I've wrote down all the techniques that everybody sent in that they've always been asking about. So I'm just going to kind of fly through these. Again, these are not good. These are not bad. These aren't best to worst. I just wrote them all down. I hope I didn't duplicate some of these. All right, here we go. Full head foil. What is a full head highlight? A full head highlight means that you are highlighting the top, the sides, and the whole back of your head. That is a full head highlight. All right. Full head highlight is kind of being referred to now loosely as the platinum card. The platinum card is different than a full head highlight because a full head highlight means you are foiling, but you are leaving your natural hair out in between. A full head foil can also mean that you are highlighting your entire head, leaving out your natural hair color in between, but then also alternating in lowlights or a different color or even a different highlight. So you don't just have to be highlighted a natural color. You can have two different levels or tones or shades of highlights and still have your natural. You can have a highlight and a different color low light. You can have a different darker color. You can have multiple colors. It doesn't matter. Just a full head highlight means that you're incorporating some type of color that's different from your natural color. A platinum card is different because you are doing every single strand of hair, you are wrapping it up in a foil. And you are trying to lighten your entire head with the foiling process and not doing it directly to the scalp. You're trying to get as close to the scalp as possible without actually touching the scalp. Okay? That is a platinum card. Why? Why would you not just then use a cream lightener or a non-scalp lightener or do a double processing? Depends on the client. It depends on the client, and it depends on how that hair is going to lift and lighten. All right? Sometimes with bleaching or sometimes with lightening and sometimes with the use of foiling, you can conduct the heat a little bit better. You can conduct it a little bit easier, and you can control that process a little bit easier as well too. With the use of, you could start off with a high volume developer in the back of the head and work your way up to a lower volume developer in the front, or you can do the reverse. You can go with a lower volume, work your way up to a higher volume. It really depends on what you're trying to do. But that's the difference between a platinum card and a full head highlight. So then what's a partial highlight? Just like its name states. I always make this joke with all my friends. The naming convention in our world is not very unique. You know, it's not very in-depth. We usually name things what they do and what they are. So a partial is just like its name states. A partial highlight is focusing on the top of your head, maybe the entire sides of your head, or maybe just a couple on the sides. And then maybe just a little bit in the crown, in the back of your head, not your entire head. So the sides could be darker and the bottom of your head could be darker with your natural color, or you can color it with a different color altogether. And then the top of your head is highlighted. And when I say highlighted, low lighting is just automatically inferred in that sentence. Okay? You are coloring your hair a different color from your natural. If it's darker than your natural, we refer to it as low lighting. If it's lighter than your natural, we refer to it as highlighting. At the end of the day, you're bringing attention to specific strands of your hair. That's where highlighting even got its name from to begin with. Little history there. All right. Next thing on the list, dimensional highlights. It's kind of like what I've been saying. If you're using more than one type of color, whether it's darker or lighter than your natural, you're trying to create a 3D effect. You're trying to get your hair to pop. You're trying to get it to look. You could either do it chunky to make it look more natural, more defined, or you could do it thinner pieces to make it look more natural. Either way, you're trying to give it an optical illusion that the hair has multiple different colors going through it. And that's that 3D effect, or that dimensional highlighting effect. All right. Baby lights. Baby lights means you are taking very, very, very thin, fine sections. When we used to highlight, we used to commonly take a slice. We would take an entire section. When we would highlight before, we would take an entire section of hair and apply it straight to that. That was a sliced highlight. It would give a very thick or predominant or chunky effect. And that was really popular. It's starting to come back now too. It's actually starting to trend now, that more defined, that more chunky highlighted effect. Otherwise, your other option was to weave, was to only take strands, particular strands from that section, not the entire section, okay? And the way you weaved it, you would either weave it chunky or you would weave it really thin. And if you did it really, really thin, we would say that's that baby fine weaving, all right? Baby lights. That's that technique. It gives you a very soft, subtle effect. Maybe you like your natural color, you just don't want it to be so solid. Maybe you like your blonde, but you want it to be different variations of blonde, right? Even in brunettes, I love doing baby lights on brunettes, anybody with darker hair. Even redheads, having different tonal values of reds is amazing. And a very quick technique you could do, you could put a single process, you could put an all over color on somebody's head, and then while they're processing, go in, and you don't have to do a partial, or just do a couple of pieces, do a couple of peekaboos, which I'm about to talk about, you know? Just put a couple of pieces in somewhere, lighten that up, take them back to the shampoo bowl, pull those foils out, and start emulsifying, start massaging all that color that you put all over the scalp, all through the ends of the hair, all over your highlights that you just did. It'll automatically tone it immediately. Everything is just going to emulsify, everything's going to mix together, and now you've got a dimensional effect. All right, peekaboos. Peekaboos is, well, I don't have long hair, so I can't really show it off, but let's just say my hair was all one length, all right, whatever length it was. A peekaboo is to take something underneath the top section of your hair and chunk out a piece of a highlight. And what ends up happening is that veil covers it up. But depending on how the hair moves, you may get a flash of that color peeking through, right? Just like peekaboo that you do to a little kid, something like that. That's a peekaboo type of highlights. Balayage. Okay. Balayage has kind of gone away from what its original intention was. A balayage highlight is a free-handed highlight that's supposed to be soft and subtle to accent the hair, so you don't look like that line of demarcation, those roots growing in. That's what balayaging is, right? And people are doing it with brushes, people are using paint brushes, people are using toothpicks, people are breaking, well, when I say toothpicks, you know, you have those highlighting paddles that have all the little teeth in it, right? And then people are snapping off those teeth, so they're just pulling through different versions and variations of it. Some people are just simply using their fingers when they're doing it. All of the above work, all right? Those are all balayaging techniques. And now they've got them where they're doing them in V. They're doing them, then you've got what, how you call it? Balayage, foliage, you know, hydrolage, you know, over wet hair. Foliage is doing the freehanding but using foils to separate all the hair. There's so many different ways of going about to do it, all right? But the idea is it's a softer, subtle effect that all blends into the hair, and you don't have a lot of outgrowth showing through when it starts to grow out. That kind of segues into ombre. Ombre is different from balayage. Balayage is certain pieces and strands that all come together. Ombre is a distinct gradient of color from dark to medium to light, or in more extreme cases, in more trending cases, from dark to light. And there's usually some kind of transition spot where you can see the difference from where the color changes from one to the other. So that's that gradient, okay? That's an ombre. What's been trending lately for the past couple of years has been balayage into ombre, you know, balayambre, all right? So there's a lot of different ways in how people are calling it. Other things that are trending, you know, that people sent in was red highlights, black highlights, blue highlights, red hair, blonde hair, the Cruella de Vil thing, black and white, you know, half and half. Those are all the same technique. It's just what color are you using in that particular case. So if you're putting red highlights over whatever color you are, light, medium, or dark, that's red. If you're putting black over blonde, that's black highlights. If you're putting a streak of blue showing through, that's you know, that's blue highlights. That's all those are. The main base technique that's referring to is the money shot, all right, or the money piece. It's a flash of color that's showing through the hair. That's that money piece, all right? That's what that's referring to. Some of the other things is like the tease lights and the sombres and you know, tease lighting and sombre is two different things. Sombre is a softer ombre. That gradient that I was talking about, where you can see the transition break from where the one color goes into the next color, the softer that transition is, the softer that ombre is. So it's a subtle ombre or a soft ombre. That's a sombre. Tease lighting is another technique which is commonly done to soften that transition of the ombre effect. But now tease lights have expanded into highlighting, even into foiling, which is kind of messy, people. If you're going to do tease lighting, do it more with the freehanding than you do with the foiling, because just like its name states, you are literally teasing the hair, and then whatever hair is left over hanging out, that's the part that you're highlighting. That's the part that you're coloring, okay? At the end of the service, when you go to rinse this out, do you comb out that teasing before you rinse it out? Or do you rinse all that color out on the ends and now you got to comb out all that teasing that's sopping wet? And if anybody's ever had to comb out a knot, you got to be really, really gentle when you're rinsing out that hair, man, because that sucks, okay? That really, really sucks. And then another thing that people were asking about was strand lighting and strobing. Is kind of the same. It's similar enough, okay? Strand lighting is literally just grabbing a few strands. Strand lighting is a combination of balayage and a money piece. You want a few strands that you want to show off, but you don't want to go in and do a full highlight or a partial highlight. That's your strand lighting, okay? Strobing means it's really more around the face. It's your face framing. So you're just trying to show off a couple of money pieces around your face framing. That's what strobing is, or strobe highlighting is. That's what that's referring to. And then as far as gray highlights or gray lights, that's, again, the different tone. Just like we were talking about red, blue, and black. Gray lighting, gray lights is a variation of a blonde where you're giving it a gray effect, okay? A gray tone. Curly lights, I actually love doing I love doing hair extensions on people with curly hair. And curl lights, what that's referring to is the technique of highlighting somebody with curly hair to really, when the hair, especially on a ringlet curl, oh baby, I love it when you can totally see the definition of two different colors interwinding with each other in a curl. All right, my personal opinion, I actually like to blow dry curly hair straight and then foil through that hair. Now you got to remember the curl pattern. You got to remember how the layers were falling. You got to think about this a little bit because placement matters, okay? But if you blow dry a curly hair straight and then think about how those curls are falling and where those curls are falling, and you can really get beautiful contrast and definition when you highlight that hair because it's nice and straight. And then when you go to wash it and that curl bounces back, that's what I'm talking about, how those colors interlock into each other. Mwah! It's beautiful. I freaking love it. So that's that one. And then a base color with highlights is a thing, you know. Look, shadow rooting, yeah, any kind of rooting is kind of like basing with highlights. We used to put a single process. We used to do a full all over color. Well, actually, back in the day, we used to foil the whole head. And then we would painstakingly go through each individual foil and then color their outgrowth, whatever was left, okay? Nowadays, the techniques is a lot simplified. People still do that, and that's still a thing, absolutely. It's way easier nowadays, and it's a lot more acceptable with current trends and techniques to just color the whole head, put the base color on there, and then foil right through the base color. And with the calibration and the technology and everything else in lighteners and bleaches nowadays, you could pretty much foil right through a base color, and it keeps it a little more easier that way. And then again, shadow rooting. You could shadow root somebody. You can foil, you could foil somebody, freehand somebody, ombre somebody, do whatever you're going to do. Well, ombre doesn't make sense, but balayage or freehand or foil somebody and then go in and shadow root. That's basically a form or a version of a base color with highlighting as well too. Those are all the different ones I got that everybody sent in. Looking at my list, highlights versus furlough, we talked about that. Yeah, so that's everything I got. I would love to hear if anybody has any additional questions. I can go deeper, I guess, into some of these trends and techniques. I teach a lot of classes on how to, and especially this year, I'm going to be having a lot more hands-on classes because in the past month or two, especially in the meetings that I've been having with new accounts, I'm getting some people who have been in the industry for a while and are nervous to do some of these techniques. I've had some people who have only ever done the newer techniques, the trending techniques, and have never done any of the base techniques. So for example, somebody told me they've only ever done baby lighting and they're nervous to do these chunky highlighting that are coming back. Conversely, I've had stylists tell me I've been in the industry forever. All I ever did was foil. I don't know how to freehand. I'm nervous. Okay. So those are the kind of classes that I teach, and those are the kind of things that I help out with all the time. So throw me your comments. Let me know. Reach out. Contact us. Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll go through it. And I'd love to hear anybody else's take or version, on something that I may have missed. And we'll go from there. We'll catch y'all next week. Thanks, everybody.